How's it going? Aloha mai kako, and thank you for that stronger aloha and getting everybody to give back a stronger aloha too. I mean, that's what Hawaii is about. Okay, so I know it's about 3:30, and we have we're supposed to start about 20 minutes ago. So I'm going to try and move as fast as possible through these slides. Some of them might be boring, I'm not sure, but I'm going to try and move through the slides as much as possible. As you look at the slides, I actually encourage questions or anything that pops up or comments or anything like that. And for me, the value of a lot of these kind of, especially intimate conversations like this, I actually enjoy hearing your guys' questions just as much. And so sometimes I don't even like to go through the slides. I'd rather get into the questions, but contextually I can understand if some of you are like, who the hell is this guy sitting up there? So I'll just, do my due diligence. There are going to be some portions of the slides that are a little bit lengthy, and I feel like if there are any questions that pop up, please hold on to those questions because I definitely want to hear them later on. So I'll try and click through this as quick as possible. So this is my grandma. Her name is Edith Kanakaole o Kohala, Kanakaole. She was a cultural icon to a certain degree, and she also was a cultural practitioner of Hula. She came from multiple generations of Hula, but one of the things that I feel she was special, or one of her talents that I felt, was that she educated anyone. She educated anybody that was willing to learn, really. And one of the big things, if you can think about it, like in the 70s, the Hawaiian language was like down to about 100 people-ish, maybe 500 max. But during that time, she had to figure out a way to be able to have the Hawaiian language flourish beyond just that 100 to 500 people. And so herself, along with about 12 different manaleo, that's what they called them because they were born within the language, born speaking within the language, but they got together and they created a codic system basically to break down the Hawaiian language so that it'd be taught on a larger platform like a collegiate system or academic system like this. And so one of the first curriculums that she built was actually for a community college in Hilo to be able to teach the Hawaiian language. That same curriculum that she taught back then is the same curriculum that UH Hilo uses as well as UH Manoa uses. And so now we're at the point of maybe about 25,000 fluent speakers. Fortunately / unfortunately, that was right when I was born, when they were starting to do the immersion program. So I started off in the immersion program, but I actually moved to English school right after that. And so I'm not necessarily completely fluent. I can hear if my mom is scolding me in Hawaiian type of thing, but I'll just say sorry and I'll walk away really quickly. But other than that, I can understand the language to a certain degree. And I think that to me, that was one of her talents, is like this generational thing that was given to her, as simple as a language. She was able to code it in a way that it was available in a larger platform so that she could educate a lot more people. So that said, a lot of her background is in Hula, and so this is actually my, I know this looks like it's a long time ago, I promise it wasn't that long ago, but this is my mom on this side and my Auntie Pua over here and my grandma in the middle. But we come from an 8th-generation Hula family. The Hula family is called the Kanakaoles. How many of you heard of Mary Monarch? Well, okay, not bad, everybody. So the stadium where Mary Monarch happens is called Edith Kanakaole Stadium. I'm not sure if you guys knew that, but that's how integral my grandma was to not only reviving the Hawaiian language, but also bringing a certain understanding of Hawaiian chant as well as Hawaiian choreography or hula into the forefront. A lot of our background comes from the volcanic activity, and so all the things about Pele and Hi'iaka, which actually is kind of crazy because it's happening right now. It's like spewing like 1,000 feet tall. It's super crazy. I'll give you a little hack. If you want to go see it at nighttime because it's free. You don't have to pay to get into the, it's kind of crazy because wouldn't you want to charge people at nighttime? That's like when you can see it better. Anyway, another hack. If you don't want to have to deal with the thousands of people that are going in there right now, you make a reservation at the Kilauea Lodge. So Kilauea Lodge is the restaurant that's right over there. You got to make it a couple days in advance, but you do it over there. It's the most spectacular view of the 1,000 feet. Anyway, hacks. Okay, so this is that my Hawaiian side of the family, and all of our understanding and our Hawaiian perspectives are based in these chants that have been passed down generationally, that all follow the travels of Pele, but also the phenomenon of volcanic activity. This is a heiau up in Kohala. I know sometimes when people hear heiau, it sometimes sounds a little like, woo-woo-ish around there. I like to look at it a little bit more frankly. The term heiau is to capture currents or to read the currents that are happening. That's literally what the Hawaiian translation of heiau is. But if you look at it from a more functional way, these large areas were usually lined up with cardinal points as well as celestial bodies to be able to read your environment like an iPad or something. So you were the people that were very talented at being able to read using these heiau would be able to read the currents or read the environmental happenings at the time to be able to forecast what kind of weather was happening in the future. That's like a more practical engagement with heiaus rather than like, oh, it's a bunch of worship. Okay. And then this is like the term of kuhi kuhi pu'one, which I said earlier, this is my grandma's name, but the term kuhi kuhi pu'one lightly translates into architect. I'm a graphic designer, which in the scale of design school is at the lowest level of academic length. Then architect, which is at the longest scale of academic length. My mom really wanted me to be an architect. I didn't really have the patience to sit in there. So I just got my graphic design degree and I thought it was fine. She's still disappointed. That said, weirdly enough, I'll circle all the way back to it, but I've actually been lecturing at the School of Architecture for the past couple of months, but I'll get into it. My grandma's kind of awesome. She's done a bunch of things throughout her career. This was actually last year that they honored her with U.S. Mint of the Quarter. It's the first time that the Hawaiian language was on their currency. I'm not saying their currency, but on the currency that we all use. And so this is kind of cool to not only acknowledge the language that she helped bring back, but also at the same time acknowledge a lot of the achievements that she's done. I don't pay for anything in cash, but I have been just in hopes to try and get one of these quarters back. So the next time you pay for something in cash, if you get one, I still haven't got the one back. It's been like a year. Anyway, hopefully you guys actually get one back. Also, side note, the D in her name, sometimes there's a mistake and the D punches too hard and it goes to George Washington's throat. Weird. It like comes out of George Washington's throat. If you get one of those, that quarter is worth $600. Anyway, sorry. Tangents. This is my mom over here. I call her a Renaissance tita because she was already blessed with all of the generational knowledge through hula and through chant and through understanding that this is a familial practice. But when she grew up to around 18, 19, she took, instead of her time having to learn all of these cultural practices, she took her time to delve into some of her interests like fashion, like sculpture, like architecture, like pottery, like painting, all of these external interests. And so for me, she really was an exemplary example of the cross between traditional knowledge but also contemporary practice or contemporary art. This is my dad in the middle over here. Pake guy, he's a Chinese guy from Kaneohe. A lot of people think he's Hawaiian. It's kind of funny actually. Like he's 1000% Chinese. Anyway, my dad grew up in Kaneohe and then eventually moved right up the road over here to Waipuna Rise, where currently my grandma still lives. But he went to school very briefly, similar, but he ended up going into real estate and moved to Hawaii Island to be able to become, I don't know, rich or something like that. But this was the time of the hippies, and so he moved to the Big Island, became a hippie basically. But during that time, he actually ran into my grandma at college and started to take some of the Hawaiian studies courses, and he got really intrigued with Hawaiian studies and just this idea of ancestral knowledge. And so he started dancing for the halau, and I think he was dancing from like 2 or 3 years or something, and then in comes this Renaissance tita and just walks in the halau and just kind of makes like the places her own. And my dad's intrigued. He's like, who the hell is this? It's still awkward for me to tell the story. But anyway, the one thing that he learned in his elementary and high school years at Roosevelt was how to do screen printing like this. And so he did Rubylith. Nobody knows Rubylith. Yes, yeah. No, one person? Okay. So it's okay, it doesn't tell your age. So Rubylith is like a clear film and a red film on top of each other, and then you go with an X-Acto and you hand cut into there, and when you peel away, the relief is your artwork. And so that's my dad's art style basically. But you would take that and then you put it onto the screen, and then you put your emulsion and you create your screen, then you screen print. This is how screen printing was done back in the day before Illustrator. And so that whole process was taught to him in high school. And so when he moved to Hawaii Island, he built himself a little studio like this, and he would do his artwork and screen print. And this was one of his ways of making income other than not doing real estate. And in the halau, he would make these little pareos, and then he started to gift them to my mom, courting or whatever you call it nowadays. And some people in the halau would see my mom with the pareo, and they'd be like, oh, Nalani, where you got that pareo from? And she's like, oh, the pocket guy in the third row. And so basically that was the start of Sig Zane Designs. And that was in 1982, 81. Actually, I was born in 82, so there's no way I was 82. 1980, 80, 81, 82, and then I was born, and we started our business actually in 1985. Other than that, the aloha shirts haven't changed. It's basically the same aloha shirt, the same coconut buttons, same 100% cotton, Kona cotton weave, and that's something that we kind of are proud of, that our product hasn't necessarily changed too much. Our audience has changed, and even the age of our audience has changed over the years, but the product, as well as the cultural narrative that was taught to my dad by my mom's mom, all of that has stayed embedded into our product even up to today. I have a few cousins that really hate on me, and they definitely would tell me, why do you put a picture of yourself in your presentation? And I was like, cause it's my presentation, I'll put whatever I want. Anyway, no. Yes, I still dance today. My knees are very old now, currently, and they're definitely giving me feedback of like not to stop dancing. But I still dance at Mary Monarch. Mary Monarch's coming up in a few weeks, and to me, one of the biggest catalysts for my perspective in design is actually the continual practice of hula, or the continuing of a cultural practice. So I wanted to just pose this question. I don't have an answer for this. Everybody can put this question in your pocket. How do you deserve to be here? Well, I don't know. Because my parents were here. Because one side of my parents came during the plantation days, and I've been here ever since. I don't know. Maybe some people just moved here for college. Maybe some people only live here for 2 weeks a year and bought a really big estate in Kauai and own one of the big social media platforms in the world. How does he deserve to be here? I don't know. But maybe it's a good question just as like perspective on, it's not just your fiscal or your financial capacity to be able to live here in Hawaii, but what do you do for the aina? I don't know. You can just put this question in your pocket. So this whole question of culture, I've shared this before, and I like to do this as just a premise of understanding, because sometimes people chant, and when you see somebody chanting, if you don't know what they're chanting about, sometimes it's awkward. I even feel awkward sometimes, and I'm pretty good at chanting. That said, I just want to break this down simply. The idea of culture as a native operating system. Okay, so one, you have your users. No matter what, if your 2 feet are on this island, you're a user, no matter how long you're here for. You're a user of this island. And so you have your users, and that's one part of the concept. And then maybe pre-Captain Cook, 1750, whatever, maybe there was a specific way that the users interacted with the land. And so maybe they had different ceremonies or different protocols or different practices, like fish ponds or hula or ava ceremonies, all of these different things. That's how they interacted. And to me, I look at that as their software to be able to interact with the finite resource of our hardware, which is Aina. And so keeping all of this in mind, the users had this overall concept of how to work with the finite hardware of Aina, but keep this in mind too, we didn't crash the hardware for the thousands of years that we've been here. So now when everybody's trying to move to sustainability, I actually feel like nobody can talk to Hawaii about sustainability because we've had to figure out how to sustain life on this island on a finite resource for 1,000 years. So it kind of gives us at the front of the curve currently right now. But one problem is I love my Starbucks just as much as, well, actually I love my pour over drip. I think a lot of the current systems now kind of disconnect us from Aina to a certain degree. One thing I like to point out, think about where you live. Think about where you woke up this morning. And try to think about where the nearest freshwater spring is. Does anybody know? Anybody? Next to my house, I don't know. Well, maybe like, gotta be at least a mile away or something.
Far.
Yeah, far. So that's how disconnected you are from this thing called Aina. Because ideally, when you wake up in the morning, you should have your water source, right? And conveniently, you can go buy a bottle of water nowadays. But that's just an example of how that disconnect is. And it's up to you guys to kind of decide how more connected do you want to be. Okay, so this idea of inciting reciprocity, I kind of broke down this idea of my mom already, and I'll kind of rush through these ones a little bit quicker. A lot of people talk about hula in different manners, and you can talk about Waikiki hula, that's fine, those people are making money. But I want to talk about hula in a little bit more of a practical manner. A lot of the chants that we've held over the past 8 generations plus, those were our information to translate to the next generation. But they figured out back in the day that this information that was embedded in these chants would translate better to the next generation if there's visuals to go alongside it, very similar to graphic design. And so back in the day, all of the royals, they had their own hula courts. You'd have your own hula court because that hula court was your way of doing visual translation to your audience. And so you had your own hula court. We have Kamehameha over here. We have Queen Emma, which is how we have Queen's Hospital. And then all of the different Kamehamehas that were there, but our halau was tied to Queen Emma. And so our halau and the lineage that I come from were the royal court dancers for Queen Emma. This is at Kalakaua's Jubilee. This is Kalakaua's royal dancers in the same way we were the royal dancers for Queen Emma. This is my great-grandma, Mary Kanaile. She was taught in hula kapu. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this term of hula kapu, but basically hula kapu means that you, one, had to have genealogy, 2, you had to have the right parent ability and resources to get into hula kapu, because it was like going to Punahou or something. You had to have resources to get in there. And then you had to have the opportunity with the right teacher. And hula kapu meant that you're given away at birth. So she was given away at birth, didn't see her parents until 13. Nowadays, guarantee that'd be all kinds of crimes and all kind of, they would see. So that was such a unique period back then. It's not that long ago too. This is 1872. Not that long ago, but she was given away at birth. She was taught all the different styles of hula and choreography. She was handed off. How many of you been to Hilo? Okay. Wailuku River next to downtown. She was handed off at Wailuku River, and she was given to her 2 uncles. The 2 uncles were named Kapeliela and Kaleko. Her sponsor, her royal sponsor was named Kekuewa. She was taken all the way down to this place in Makuu, super rural in the middle of nowhere. I think the next house, even from here currently today, is at least 15 minutes drive away. Doesn't this sound like the layout for a crime? It almost sounds. Anyway, taken by the two uncles and taken to this rural place. So nuts. Anyway, she was taught all of these different ideas of hula from a kumu named Naholava'a. And so 1850s to 1900, his name was Naholava'a. And then Mary Ahiena was a teacher. Okay, one really cool thing that I heard from my mom that was passed on. One dance that we have is called Kuololoa, and it's one of the first Pele dances that, that you learn in our halau. I was told that all the kids, and so there's 12 kids in this hula kapu class, and they would all go to sleep. And Naholava'a, he was a busy guy. He was a teacher. He had to go on his canoe, go to Maui, go to Oahu, and everything, come back. And when he wasn't able to be there in person, all the kids would go to sleep, and he would enter into their dream state and teach them the motions. And when they wake up, all the kids would have the same motions. I'm still trying to grasp how to even do that. Anyway, one of the dances that we have today was passed down through a dream state. So, and just thinking back, like, this is Naholava'a, this guy, but also he had much more ability than just what we have a conscious concept of currently right now. Okay, moving on. I won't go through this whole list, but basically, when we're talking about generational business, which is what I was talking about today at the family business talk earlier today, Sig Zane Designs in general is only 2 generations. It's my dad and me, so I don't feel like we qualify for generational business. But the knowledge that was passed on to my dad actually came from this lineage here. So Mary Ahiena to Harriet, Keahilihau to Edith Kanakaole to Pua Kanakaole to my mom, Nalani Kanakaole, and then these are the multiple classes that graduated out of our hula studio. And then this tiny little bit right over here is me right here in my class, and we graduated with about 9 of us. Okay. So as we move on, instead of hula, what I was saying earlier, let's look at the knowledge base and cultural practices and ceremonial characteristics of hula. Do any of these plants look familiar to you? Some of them? Some of them actually grow in Manoa. So this one over here is liko. This is pala'a, this is palapalai, this is ie, this is maile. And so in our halau, we have to learn all of these different plants because they have, what's up, Ben? We have these different chants that identify these different plants that are important to our halau. One thing we only found out recently is that each of these plants are also the stepping stones to be able to build an abundant forest. Okay, I leave that with you. As you understand these different plants, and as we have to go into the bushes, like I'm talking about deep bushes, you're hiking for like hours just to find the right plant and then find the right flower, and then you're bringing it back, and then you have to learn how to make a lei. Like this kind of, you have to learn how to make a lei with it, and then you have to put it on the altar. We don't share pictures of our altar that much, but anyway, this is our altar in our halau. And so all of us, like I've been dancing for 32 years, I've been making leis for 32 years, and so I would feel that in my time learning about these different plants, I got to understand the blooming cycles of a lot of these plants, the elevations that they grow at, the different colors, the textures, and just understanding even the fragility of these plants when you're making leis. And so all of these things, when you think of hula as just motions, this is also the teachings that go alongside hula, or at least our hula. And then there's all of these other items like protocol, ceremonial eating, which is my favorite, kalua pig, poi, limu, poke, all the awesome things of Hawaii. And then understanding that the art forms of hula, like this one up here, creating the different ohe kapala. When I first went to design school, they said, okay, so this shape tells a story. And I was like, I know all about that. What are you talking about? And they were telling me that that's called identity and branding. And I was like, oh, Hawaiian's been doing that since way before. Anyway, I had to learn how to click the mouse to figure out how to translate that. But generally, the concept of ohe kapala is very same to current logo and identity branding currently today. And And so as far as like all of these items together, they all speak to, but I think I did go through a lot of items, but if anybody has any questions, I don't mind just like fielding questions right now as we wait for the bacon to be done cooking.
I can start with some questions.
Sure.
Okay. I guess you didn't get to this yet, but in terms of branching off and starting your own businesses, what kind of inspired you to do that, and what is that like?
Well, I think one, I was trying to start my own businesses in the first place because I didn't want to work for my dad at all whatsoever. I tried to run away from retail as much as possible, but I learned pretty quickly that designers don't necessarily always make good businessmen right off the dot. And so there's a lot of things about small business that I had to learn in the meantime. So I had maybe like 3 failed businesses before I actually had one good business, which, if you guys fail at one business, might as well keep on trying. But now currently my current business right now that I'm working on is, beside my design and consulting business, is actually a soil testing lab. And I'll kind of get into some of the detail of that. But one of the main ideas is that some of the plants that I was talking about in the presentation before we were rudely interrupted, some of those plants also speak to different varieties of soil, and that if we were like looking in an urban landscape like this and we were trying to decide where to put housing, if the soil's super abundant and you knew that it could grow really good crops, would you want to put housing on that soil? As compared to maybe there's a soil that's less abundant. And so that's one of my main things now, is trying to figure out how can we use certain technologies that we have today, but use some of the information that came from the past to be able to inform those kind of new businesses. So the soil lab right now, we're in our first investment round. And the idea is to be able to build a soil lab that will be publicly accessible. Because right now there's a soil lab right over there. But that one is only through the college. And other than that, you have to send all your soil samples to Ohio.
And it's not. They stopped taking.
Yeah, they stopped taking. CTAR stopped taking. Yeah. So perfect business opportunity. Any other questions? I know there's questions out there. Go ahead.
In regards to your design process, what would you say is your main target consumer?
That's a really good question. So I would say from the Aloha shirts that my dad has built over the years, his consumer was never Governor Ige. I'm just putting names out there. We never give free shirts to politicians as much as people think, they pay for all their own things. Anyway, his first consumer was actually the cultural practitioners that actually had a relationship with a lot of the plants that he was doing design work of. But because of the credibility that my dad has built over the years, being a businessman, as well as being a part of the cultural community, a lot of people I've noticed that if they would like to borrow some of that cultural credibility, then it's as easy as buying an Aloha shirt on SigZaneDesigns.com. That is released every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Anyway, but yeah, I would say our audience is not necessarily, I don't look at our audience in a typical marketing type of way. I look at our audience in more of an educational way. So trying to craft our narrative so that it can educate different groups of people and at multiple levels of people, from the most highest of cultural practitioner to the newest person to Hawaii. Yeah. But redesigning the product based around that.
Okay, thank you, because I see that your designs are marketed or designed by from Gen X to baby boomers and beyond. So
yeah. I remember in high school, my senior picture, my dad ironed an Aloha. I feel horrible about saying this. My dad ironed an Aloha shirt for me and I didn't wear it. He ironed a Sig Zane shirt and I think I wore like a Quicksilver shirt or something like that. But I think that was one of the big things. Where is she? She was wearing a fighting eel dress. But yeah, so even like with fighting eel, we look at those as opportunities, of course, as money making opportunities too, because fighting eel's awesome in the audience that they have. But also at the same time, we try to look at those as educational opportunities too. Yeah.
Thank you.
He can stand here because he has a nice shirt on. Yeah.
Can I ask a non kind of culture
Yeah,
related question?
of course.
Design one. I think like right now we're at kind of this beginning of AI getting integrated into the design process itself, and graphic design is one of the areas I think it's like most relevant to. I'm curious, like, what has you excited? What are you seeing like in that landscape right now with the tools you play with?
So like with Luma Labs or like any of the image generating part, even in Illustrator, they're still pretty far off when it comes to creating items that are specific to what we want to see here. And so it's going to take a good amount of context building first, and then the right prompt that will give you the right AI generated piece. I think so this one group that I'm a part of, Abundant Intelligences, you ever heard of them? They're a full indigenous group of tech people that are trying to create not only our own storage of our intellectual property, but also our own prompting system of that. Rather than using a Google or rather than using some of the larger AI systems that are out there, trying to develop our own so that we hold our IP to ourselves. And I think that that's the part where I'd rather head in is how do we get ahead of it? Because the same question is there. It's like, if I could create a design off with my dad's prints without paying somebody a salary, I'm a businessman too. I'll take the opportunity. But then it's going to become the question of how do you better design the content and prompts to be able to put out something that's still tasteful or thoughtful. And so I'm not against it, and I've been trying to stay, at the forefront of it. But at the same time, if AI is going to be kind of designing the life around us, we want to make sure we fill it up with the right amount of content. And that's the group that I'm a part of, Abundant Intelligences, is not only trying to take AI from a Western perspective, but trying to take AI from an indigenous perspective too. Yeah. I hope that answered your question. Yeah. I'm nervous when you ask me a question. Yeah. Bacon's taking a long time, yeah. Any other questions?
So, with your work, you bring this multi-generational knowledge about China, about specific plants, and you present that to an audience. But you work with some big brands, international brands. You've worked for people not from Hawaii. I'm sure you've been confronted with the idea of commodification, of taking a surface level understanding of all of that knowledge and monetizing it.
Yep.
How do you educate that type of client while pushing back, while honoring your ancestry, all those things? Like there's so much in that question. So sorry about the giant question.
That is a giant question. Jeez.
But like, I'd love to know more about how you present that to someone who maybe just doesn't quite get it, even if it's a really, really great brand that you're excited to work with.
Yeah. Nike, monstrous. Oregon Ducks, awesome. Not this season. But in designing some of the uniforms for the Oregon Ducks, they were actually pretty thoughtful. But the main thing that they wanted to celebrate was that they wanted to honor the Polynesian talent that came from, Samoa, from Hawaii, from all over, and made their way up to the Oregon Ducks and made into what they are. So they wanted to do a design that would kind of speak to those lineages. And so that was cool. They flew down to talk story with us. And while we were kind of just conversing back and forth, as purely creative professionals, they were curious much more than just what would sell. And they wanted to take a stance and position of trying to share a story or tell a story too, which I appreciated. Um, and then it came down to whatever we create for them, because of liability purposes, Nike had to own the artwork 100% basically, and they wouldn't budge on that. So since they didn't budge on that, we actually made our shapes simpler. That would actually be pretty difficult to defend from a legal standpoint, because nobody owns a triangle, you know. And so we made our shapes more simpler in shape, so that if we are passing on the IP and the ownership of IP, at least it's something that would be hard to kind of defend in court, type of thing. That was one part. I actually didn't share that with anybody. I only shared that with you guys right now. But so that's one part. Two, charge the hell out of them, so that maybe that resources of money can help us lawyer up a little bit better in other opportunities. But three, the last one was, I have this process of doing design makabalu. I was going to get to it, but it's basically a Hawaiian design theory to a certain degree. And it identifies each element that's in the design, no matter if it's together or duplicated or laid out in a textile. I just identify each element and put the storyline of each of those elements down. And that's what I end up sharing with the client in a presentation. The designers that were there, we had 11 designers that worked on this project with us. They were so intrigued by the story of each of those that when it came down to designing the cleats, I didn't even have to design them. They designed it because they saw the story and they're like, this makes sense to be able to go on a cleat because it talks about moving fast. And so the design process became more of like a precise communication about why it's important to us. And they adopted that idea of importance. And so, for better or worse, we're going to run into people that want to commodify it no matter what. And you got to protect yourself legally anyway. But I think if you're able to share your genuine intent and the genuine story behind it, they actually come and join you on your side rather than having to battle them on their side, if that makes sense. But that's a great question, though. One problem with the copyright system is that it's very territorial. It's a Western territorial concept, and so there's one part that we're trying to figure out is like, what if we created like a Native Hawaiian design association or agency that just overlooked the IP, didn't own it, but just overlooked it and had some jurisdiction over the usage of it. So just different ways or opportunities like that. Wow, really? Somebody burned something down? This is so unique. 1, 2, 3.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, first of all, I'm a big fan of Sig Zane. I have four of you guys on all shirts. And I just want to ask a question from a consumer's perspective. What is the intent behind having the store open only on Fridays? Is it exclusivity or is it
I know.
get loyal customers come?
I know. I'm sorry.
Because I love you guys.
I appreciate that, bro.
Awesome. You guys are open
Yeah.
every day.
I want to say, I wish I could say that it was like a genius marketing concept. I wish.
Yeah.
When we this was 2014 when we first started talking about opening up in Oahu. That shirt right there that Ben's wearing over there, those shirts are not 100%, but printed, sewn, designed in Hawaii. As you can imagine, it's hard to find stuff just made in Hawaii in general. And so the printers of that fabric, literally like passing the squeegee back and forth like that. And then the sewers are here, designed here. To pull off a 85% made in Hawaii product is actually really hard. So we've been doing it for 40 years. So we have our vendors that we worked with, and even our printers. I've been working with them for, the printer's dad taught me how to do textile repeat. The amount the quantity that they can manufacture is very limited. And so when we started to do the numbers of an Oahu store, we were like, okay, let's open up. Yeah, we wanted to open up 6 days a week, Sundays off. And then we were guesstimating how many Aloha shirts we would be able to sell. And we're like, oh shit, we're going to sell out in 2 days. And then we're going to have to deal with 5 days of angry customers. So that was the first part of it. Then I was like, oh, you know, it'd be really cool if we opened up in Chinatown. We have our shop in downtown in Hilo, and that's why I like downtown areas. But I was like, what if we opened up a lay shop Monday through Wednesday, and at the back, we opened up the back on Friday or Thursday, and we had lays. This is so crazy. I feel like this is a dream right now. Very surreal. And so the initial concept was to open up a lay shop from Monday through Wednesday, open up the back Thursday, Friday with Aloha shirts. That was the initial concept. I didn't know that the lay shop business in Chinatown is kind of somewhat gangster-ish. Like, unless you're a family that had the shop for a long time, they try to hold down their block, you know? And we already have Lynn's on the other side of our block, so we didn't want to encroach on their business. And so we were finally stuck with the last answer of like, hey, what if we're only open on Thursday and Friday? And then we're like, this would be kind of funny. What if we're only open on Fridays? Aloha Fridays. And it was a joke, literally. But I sat down with my partner at the time, Aaron. He has his MBA. He graduated from here. But we did the numbers and we broke down how many Aloha shirts we'd have to sell to only be open 1 day a week. And next April, we make 10 years of only being open on Fridays, which kind of broke a lot of people's business plan concepts. Like especially the Hawaii National Bank. I love them. But Hawaii National Bank gave us our loan to renovate the space. And when we told them we're only open on Fridays, they were like, we're saying goodbye to this money. They're not going to pay us back because they thought our business concept was going to fail. And one of the biggest things that happened is the first 4 Fridays, we had a line of easily like 40, 50 people every Friday. And that in itself was our marketing, because people would drive by and be like, what the hell is going on in there, you know? And it's worked. So anyway, that's a long story, but that's the long answer of why. So unless we figure out better manufacturing in Hawaii, we'll still be open only on Fridays. Somebody was cooking bacon. I'm sorry, somebody burnt the bacon. I hope somebody will tell us if there's like smoke coming up from the top of the building. That'd suck. This building's brand new. Any other questions out there?
Would you share what's your next collab coming out?
Ooh. Flying veggie.
Oh, to be funny. We have a bunch. Especially because this is our 40th year. In October we make 40 years, so we have a bunch of collaborations. 2 that I'm looking forward to. About 4 years ago, especially after COVID, I got super into bow hunting. And especially on Big Island, you know, there's plenty of bow hunting opportunities. So I got super into it. And then I always was like into Nikes, and I was kind of like a sneakerhead. So like when I went hunting with all my friends, I would wear Nike hiking shoes, and I thought I was cool. And then all my friends would be like shitting on me, basically like, bro, don't be wearing those. You got to wear Danners. And so Danners are like the legit boot. I got to meet some of the Danner team when I was up at Nike one time. Super nice guys. They actually have a few ties back to Hawaii. And one guy in there had a Sig Zane shirt. And so I just like had lunch with them. And so this October, we're actually debuting 2 shoes with them. Yeah. And then the other one is actually a capsule with a school that's right across the street. So that'll be coming out in December. Yeah. all kind of fun things.
I like your club wheel.
Hey, this is the blank of that shirt, or the first version of that. Our shirts are so comfortable, which, don't get me wrong, I love Made in Hawaii, but I left the house this morning at 6:30. I didn't have time to iron my shirt. And so I was like, this one, dryer. Anybody else out there? I thought you had a list of questions already.
There is a list of questions.
It got,
My brain.
it got burned? Oh.
She has a good question. Yeah. I can ask more questions. I'm just letting other people have a chance.
Yeah, of course.
I guess one question that I have, it wasn't on the list. You talked about the educational experience, and so in your design process, can you talk about how you kind of integrate the educational and what kind of priority you give that versus something maybe that is aesthetically pleasing? Like how big is education?
No, education is huge. But looking pretty is just as important. So, but I would say, so for a lot of our larger design projects, what we specialize in is research of place from a Hawaiian perspective. And so there's different formulas or websites or areas that you can go to do Hawaiian research, like the name of the winds or the name of the rains. And so I think once we do enough research on that area, we prepare it as an initial presentation. And so the client, they don't even know that they sign up for this, but we break up our presentations into 3 sets, into a set of 3. The first presentation is only research. And so we're actually educating them through that. Then the next presentation is selecting an intent out of all that research. And we build like a olelo no ea, or a mission statement, for lack of better terms, of the intent of what we're selecting from all of that research. And then the last presentation is the pretty, like the aesthetic portion. And so the aesthetic portion is always something that we can control and we can engineer to make sure that it looks great. But the educational component, they don't even have a choice. Once they sign on the dotted line, they're going to get an educational workshop first, and then they're going to get our intent, and then they'll get the design aspect. And that's basically the 3 phases. So that's like, no matter if it's Hawaiian Airlines or Nike or Hawaiian Electric or even Hawaii Fire Department, like a lot of times these projects, a lot of people don't even know that we do it a lot of times, but that's because for us the opportunity is actually the educational part. Yeah. But that's a great question though. I feel like this area didn't ask questions. I feel like there's some questions over there. No?
What inspires you? No.
A great pauhana drink now. No, I'm not joking. We have a tequila bottle. We are coming out with a tequila bottle, but it's coming out on April 23rd as a part of our 40th anniversary. But weirdly enough, the thing that inspires me is the thing that I actually hated when I was a kid is doing yard work, or like going to a fish pond and helping do the dry stack at like He'ia or something like that, or even dancing, or getting dragged in the bushes by my dad to go make a lei or something like that. All of these things that I actually don't like to do, I weirdly find the most inspiration in. And then even when I'm presenting, or like when I'm talking story with some of the clients, weirdly enough, it's those stories that actually come up the most when we're presenting. But yeah, no, thank you.
I'll ask another one.
Yeah.
When you think about like dynastic businesses, right, family run, generation over generation, when you were coming in with your pops, you know, you're still a young business at that point, 20 years. For your kids, you guys will be probably 60 years in at that point. Are you thinking about that succession plan, or are you kind of, hey, we'll see where they end up when they're in their 20s?
I've never been called a dynastic business. That's interesting. It took me a little while to put that term into my dictionary to understand. I told my dad, so Alfred Shaheen. If you guys are familiar, but Alfred Shaheen was like one of the most successful fashion businesses from Hawaii to be exported out into the world. Elvis was one of the biggest wearers of Alfred Shaheen. And so he was a very successful business. He lasted 52 years. We're at 40 right now. I told my dad that since that was like one of my idols, no way. Hey, you guys are awesome though. The fact that you guys are still standing here amidst the fire. I told my dad that my goal is to hit 50 years. And we'll see what happens after that. But I would say okay, so everybody saw on Dole Street, the two buildings coming up? It's a faculty building and then student housing, I think, right next to each other. I don't know if that's such a smart idea to put faculty and student housing right next to each other.
They set the prices too high for students to be able to afford it.
Oh, got it. Okay. So then they came, and since we're doing a lot of the projects with the university, they did their presentation to the university, but I got pulled into the meeting to kind of go over their visual package that they were putting together. And it's a really cool building. It's not going to have any air condition because they developed the airflow within the space to be able to cool down all the rooms. Really cool. A part of that is that they need protection from the sun, and they, like you guys right now. And then they have these shades that are going to go over the whole side of the building. And they were wondering if we could comment on their design. And so they had their architecture firm, which is from the mainland, share with us the story, or share with us the presentation of their design. So it's kind of triangular shape that they had. And they're like, this is a tribal inspired of like kappa beading and shapes and tattoos. I could tell that they were kind of like Googling their research, but they're also nervous because they weren't sure if like one of us knew, like the actual story behind it. The architecture teacher that's in there, with Brian, who's in there, he stopped them about halfway through the presentation. I was like, hey. Because of the work that the Zane family, as well as other Native Hawaiian design entities have done over the past, couple decades, no longer can you just come out with a design unless you have a story behind it. That was like a huge epiphany for me, because I didn't have to say that. Somebody else stated that to this architect firm. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, they give me a consulting contract first, and then I get a design contract after that. I was just pulled in just to give my thoughts, but now I have multiple contracts just with that one building. To answer your question, about 50 years, I may be done with Sig Zane Designs at a certain point, but my goal is that we create societal norms around implementing this type of knowledge or this type of artwork so that my children can have industries and available business that will keep them here. Yeah. Whatever additional questions you guys have, we can kind of finish those up, but definitely appreciate you guys. Okay. Wow, that was crazy. Okay, getting back to this. This is the industries that our ancestral knowledge has touched over the years, and it's kind of crazy to look at this in different pillars too, because a lot of times when you look at people just as like an entity or something like that, they still, if you just change the framework of it and look at them in a business context, this is what our hello industry would look like. It took us about 6 generations to be able to build it up to this point, but this is what it would look like. And then that little blip right there is actually Sig Zane Designs. And so a lot of the things that we talked about today are shared with you. All of that is all within that one small little blip. And then actually right below that is the soil analysis company, which I actually added on here, which is called Makali'i Metrics. And we kind of talked about that concept. And then, anybody heard of Chef Gooch before? He's a popular chef nowadays. He doesn't have restaurants anymore. He teaches at Kuhao. But he's from here, and he grew up dancing in our halau, and so this is actually him dancing. But he broke down his ideas of how the halal influenced his employees, and he broke down these specific terms, which is kind of cool. Growing up in the halal, it gives you a hypersensitive awareness of your surroundings. The idea that you experience the effort and time that it takes for the land to rejuvenate itself, and then the lesson in observation translated into his kitchen, and the work ethic as a chef. And all of these lessons are things learned from Halal Kikuhi that he passes on to his cooks. And so everybody understands restaurant business as an actual business, as an economic engine. And on top of that, I don't know if you guys ever heard of gastro diplomacy. I didn't know this, but like sometimes you subsidize chefs to open up restaurants in other countries because it helps the diplomacy between the two countries. Imagine if you didn't have lemon chicken, that kind of concept. And so I was like, wow, is that why there's so many poke restaurants up in the mainland now? Anyway, poke. So just taking some of the ideas of what has been embedded within our Hula lineage and what has been taught to us, but how it translates into entrepreneurship mindset. And so finishing this whole thing off is that taking it all the way back to Kekuewa, who was the royal sign-off of my great-grandma who went into the Hula Kapu. So this guy Naholova'a, the teacher, he had to take care of 12 kids all by himself from 0 to 13. Anybody in this room, would you be able to take care of 12 kids? Me, I can't take it. I have 2, I'm done. Would you be able to take care of 12 kids with no finances at all? No way, not possible. Even back then in the 1800s, I'm positive that he was paid some sort of monetary transaction to be able to take care of these kids, because he had to support all of these 12 kids all the way till they were 13 years old. And so for me, I look at that monetary transaction as actually an investment in our culture. And what that allowed to do was build the whole industry of the slides that you've seen previously. And so that's why I like to look at this idea of Kekuewa was the royal, but she invested capital through Naholova'a in my great-grandma Mary, and that allowed for all of our culture to have today. So if this investment didn't happen, Hawaiian language wouldn't be where it is today. That quarter wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have been talking to you today. And so just kind of keeping that in mind is that these small little blips of actions that happen in history have huge implications and impacts in future generations. I'll keep this one super quick, but my friend Kamu Enos, he just told me one thing. Because I do design work for so many different people. They're like, "Aren't you tired of doing design work for other people? Why don't you do your own?" And I was like, "I do my own too." He told me, he was like, if they have a Hawaiian design on, are they using the Hawaiian culture? Or what if other people are holding expectations of that person wearing the Hawaiian shirt to be more Hawaiian? And so I kind of like that idea of, hey, you're free to wear the shirt if it's pretty, if you think it looks good, that's great. But also our shirts do come with a slight responsibility to learn the story behind it. So anytime you see Governor Ige or even Governor, what is his name? Josh Green, Governor Green, ask him the story behind his shirt. See if he knows it. I did it a couple times when I was a little bit more anonymous. 100% of the time they don't know the story. But that's a part of the responsibility of not only having a logo by us, but also having an Aloha shirt by us. And so, yes, you're free to wear it, but at the same time, take the time to be able to understand it or understand the story behind it. And so that's what I like to say is a reclamation of space. And my whole premise is, how do we take design thinking out of just a product and human-centric thought process, but weave Aina back into that overall process? And over the years, we've done so many different projects, and a lot of it was based off of questions about that idea of Aina and the importance of Aina. Also the idea of connection or even disconnect of Aina. And then where are the insights when it comes to cultural practice? While I'm sweating, dancing hula and everything, I'm hating it, my knees are sore, but same thing is that the inspirations are fed to me through those different practices. And so all over the years, we've had opportunities to work with many different clients, from the highest of retail to the highest of art. And over the years, I think it's just paid back in dividends of both joy in my dad being able to see his artwork literally like on every platform possible. We've got to align with multiple different companies over the years. And then, oh, this is the Oregon Ducks one, the one that's telling you guys about. I heard that UH just signed a contract with Nike. I'm gonna have to reach back out to them again, because the last time I talked to the Oregon Ducks, they said they're gonna set up a bowl where they challenge UH, and then they're gonna wear our design. I was like, don't do that. That sounds horrible. What if you guys win and then we're gonna look like the bad guys? Anyway, the solution to that is if I designed both the teams. Anyway. But yeah, the reclamation of space is something important, and taking all these narratives and stories and try to build them into a space that can continue our cultural knowledge from the past, but make it relevant for currently today. And I'm sure a lot of you guys all see these signs on a regular basis. There's still another like 35 that are going to be installed over time. And there's a full storyline behind this. You can go to uhwayfinding.com to be able to find the story. But other than that, I appreciate you guys sitting through the fire. Literally sitting through the fire. Mahalo for the time and your guys'